The world of cults has always fascinated and horrified us in equal measure. From the infamous Jonestown Massacre to the shadowy machinations of Scientology, these groups often live on the edges of society, hidden in plain sight. But for every high-profile cult we've heard of, there are countless others buried beneath layers of secrecy and silence. Cults whose stories are too bizarre, too disturbing, or too obscure to reach the mainstream. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on two of the most unsettling cults you've never heard of. Groups whose actions defy reason and whose legacies still haunt the few who escape their grasp. Prepare for a deep dive into the murky waters of the Anthill Kids, a Canadian cult led by a maniacal prophet whose reign of terror involved brutal mutilation and psychological torment, and the Superior Universal Alignment, an apocalyptic Brazilian sect responsible for heinous crimes against children. These aren't just stories of misguided beliefs. They're chilling tales of manipulation, violence, and the darkest corners of human behavior. So, dim the lights, settle in, and get ready to uncover the horrifying truths about these disturbing cults. When we think of cults, we often imagine sprawling compounds or mysterious underground bunkers. But the Anthill Kids took a different form. A small, nomadic community under the tyrannical control of one man, Roch Thériault. Born in Quebec, Canada, Thériault was a charismatic leader with an unshakable belief that he was chosen by God. The group formed in the late 1970s after Thériault began preaching apocalyptic warnings of the world's imminent end. He convinced a small band of followers that only by joining him could they find salvation. They lived in a remote commune in the Canadian wilderness, where they were isolated from society and from reason. At first glance, Thériault's group appeared to be just another off-grid community. They farmed the land, raised animals, and seemed to live in harmony with nature. But beneath this facade lurked a nightmare. Thériault's teachings emphasized absolute obedience, and he ruled his commune with an iron fist. Disobedience, even in the smallest form, was met with horrifying punishments. Thériault referred to his followers as children, and himself as Papa. His obsession with control escalated as he delved deeper into delusional beliefs. He claimed to be a prophet, destined to lead his flock to salvation. Anyone who dared question his authority became the subject of sadistic punishments. Followers were whipped, beaten with hammers, or even forced to break their own legs with sledgehammers. Thériault also committed brutal acts of mutilation, including removing followers' teeth and amputating their limbs. One of the most shocking aspects of the Anthill Kids was the way Thériault manipulated the concept of divine healing. Claiming to have the power to heal, he performed crude surgeries on his followers without anesthesia. These procedures, often carried out with kitchen tools, were brutal and deadly. In one infamous case, Thériault tried to remove a follower's appendix by slicing open her abdomen. She died in agony shortly after. But Thériault's reign of terror didn't stop with physical abuse. The psychological manipulation was just as severe. Followers were cut off from family and friends, and Thériault encouraged them to confess their sins to him, which he then used as leverage to further control them. The group was kept in a constant state of fear and dependency, convinced that the outside world was evil and only Thériault could save them. The horrors of the Anthill Kids finally came to light in 1989 when one brave member escaped and contacted authorities. What police found was a scene of unimaginable horror. Thériault was arrested, and his trial revealed the full extent of his atrocities. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he was later killed by another inmate. Even decades later, the scars left by Thériault's cruelty linger. The Anthill Kid serves as a chilling reminder of how one man's delusions can destroy lives and turn paradise into hell. While the Anthill Kids were a horrifying example of cult violence in North America, across the globe in Brazil, another sinister group was taking shape. The Superior Universal Alignment, or SUA, may sound like a self-help group or a New Age spiritual movement, but its dark history reveals something far more sinister. The Superior Universal Alignment was founded in the 1980s by Valentina de Andrade, a mysterious woman who claimed to be a prophet. Her teachings centered around apocalyptic beliefs, much like many other cults. But there was a unique twist. She believed she had been chosen by alien beings to deliver humanity from destruction. According to de Andrade, the world was full of corruption, and only a select few, those who followed her teachings, would survive the coming purge. De Andrade's writings included bizarre claims about the nature of good and evil, but her most chilling doctrine was her assertion that children born after 1981 were inherently evil. She described these children as cursed and claimed they would bring ruin to the world. This belief became the foundation for a series of horrifying crimes. At its peak, the SUA had hundreds of followers across Brazil, most of whom were ordinary people drawn in by de Andrade's charisma and apocalyptic warnings. However, a small, devoted faction of her followers became involved in a series of brutal child murders in the state of Para during the late 1980s and early 1990s. The details of these crimes are almost too horrific to recount. Children were abducted, tortured, and killed in what appeared to be ritualistic ceremonies. Many of the victims were mutilated, their bodies showing signs of surgical precision. Authorities later discovered that some of the murders were allegedly part of an effort to cleanse the world of the cursed children de Andrade had warned about. De Andrade denied involvement in the killings, claiming her teachings had been misunderstood. But evidence suggested otherwise. Witnesses testified that she had directly encouraged her followers to act against the cursed children, fueling their delusions with her apocalyptic rhetoric. Police also uncovered documents linking de Andrade to the crimes, including a manifesto outlining her beliefs about the corruption of children. In 2003, de Andrade was brought to trial along with several of her followers. The trial was a media spectacle, with shocking revelations about the cult's practices. Despite the overwhelming evidence, de Andrade was acquitted due to a lack of direct proof tying her to the murders. Many of her followers, however, were convicted and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. To this day, the case remains a haunting mystery. While de Andrade has faded from the public eye, her legacy endures as one of the most disturbing examples of how cult leaders can twist their followers' beliefs into deadly actions. The children who were murdered are remembered not only as victims of a heinous crime, but as symbols of the terrifying power of manipulation. Both the Ant Hill Kids and the Superior Universal Alignment reveal the terrifying extremes of human behavior. These cults weren't just about strange beliefs or isolated communities. They were about power, control, and the devastating consequences of blind faith. Roch Thériault used religion to justify his sadistic reign of terror, while Valentina de Andrade cloaked her apocalyptic visions in alien prophecy. In both cases, the charismatic leaders exploited their followers' fears and vulnerabilities, turning them into instruments of destruction. Their stories serve as stark reminders of how easily people can be drawn into dangerous ideologies, and how devastating the consequences can be. While it's tempting to think of these cults as relics of a darker past, it's important to remain vigilant. Cults still exist today, often operating under the radar. By understanding their methods and the psychological tactics they use, we can better protect ourselves and others from falling into their grasp. The stories of the Ant Hill Kids and the Superior Universal Alignment are chilling, but they also highlight the resilience of the human spirit. Survivors of these cults have gone on to rebuild their lives, sharing their experiences to help others avoid the same fate. Their courage reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable horror, there is hope. So the next time you hear about a small, eccentric group with a charismatic leader, think twice. Sometimes, the most disturbing stories are the ones hiding in plain sight, and sometimes, the scariest monsters are the ones who walk among us. If you found this deep dive as chilling as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let me know in the comments what other dark and mysterious topics you'd like me to explore. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. Cults have long been a source of fascination and horror, with their bizarre beliefs and disturbing practices captivating public attention. While infamous groups like Jonestown or Scientology dominate headlines, there are lesser-known cults whose atrocities are equally, if not more, horrifying. In this video, We dive into the terrifying stories of the Ant Hill Kids and the Superior Universal Alignment, two cults that operated in the shadows and left legacies of unspeakable violence. The Ant Hill Kids were led by Roch Thériault, a self-proclaimed prophet who founded the cult in Canada during the 1970s. Initially presenting himself as a charismatic, spiritual leader, Thériault quickly revealed his darker intentions. Isolating his small group of followers in the wilderness, he established absolute control over their lives, demanding unwavering loyalty and submission. Beneath the facade of communal living, Thériault unleashed brutal physical and psychological abuse on his followers. Those who disobeyed were subjected to unimaginably cruel punishments, including beatings, amputations, and even forced self-mutilation. Under the guise of divine healing, Thériault performed untrained surgeries, often using crude tools and without anesthesia, resulting in agonizing deaths. The horrors of the Ant Hill Kids finally ended when one brave member escaped and contacted authorities in 1989. Thériault was arrested, and his atrocities came to light during his trial. He was sentenced to life in prison, but the psychological scars on his surviving followers remain to this day. In Brazil, the Superior Universal Alignment, SUA, took a different, but equally sinister, path under the leadership of Valentina de Andrade. Claiming to be a prophet chosen by alien beings, de Andrade preached apocalyptic warnings and bizarre doctrines. Her most chilling belief? That children born after 1981 were inherently evil and destined to corrupt the world. This twisted ideology led to a series of brutal child murders in the late 1980s and early 1990s. De Andrade's followers, drawn in by her charisma and apocalyptic teachings, abducted and killed children in ritualistic ceremonies. The crimes were marked by horrifying acts of mutilation, which de Andrade justified as part of her cleansing of the world. Although she denied involvement in the murders, evidence linked her to the crimes, including written manifestos encouraging violence. In 2003, de Andrade and her followers faced trial, exposing the horrific extent of their actions. While some followers were convicted, de Andrade was controversially acquitted due to insufficient evidence directly tying her to the killings. The case remains a haunting example of how apocalyptic cults can spiral into violence. Both the Ant Hill Kids and the Superior Universal Alignment highlight the devastating power of manipulation, with leaders exploiting fear, isolation, and blind faith to maintain control. These chilling stories serve as warnings of the dangers posed by unchecked authority and extreme ideologies. Through this video, we explore not only the heinous crimes committed by these cults, but also the resilience of the survivors who escaped their grasp. These disturbing histories remind us to remain vigilant and critical in the face of charismatic leaders and extreme beliefs. Stay curious, stay informed, and always question what lies beneath the surface.